This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Baruchim haba and welcome everyone. Welcome to a very special edition of All Parsha on Parshas Tetzaveh, the Haturim on Parshas Tetzaveh. Now, this week, aside from being Parshas Tetzaveh, it's also the week of Purim, and in fact, Shabbos is Purim for the Bnei Yerushalayim. But we're going to endeavor to share a number of very important thoughts from the Haturim on the Parsha, and we're going to conclude with an absolute gem of the Haturim who brings in the Yom Tov of Purim into Parshas Tetzaveh. So let us begin. The Haturim opens up the Parsha with the well-known observation that Moshe Rabbeinu's name does not appear in this week's Parsha, and he points out that from the time Moshe Rabbeinu comes to the scene, Moshe's name appears in every single Parsha, with the notable exception of Parshas Tetzaveh. Well, says the Haturim, the reason for that is Moshe Rabbeinu said to God that if you destroy the Jewish people, then mecheni na misifracha asher kasafta, please erase me from your book that you wrote. There is a principle quoted in the Gemara Makkos in Daf Yud Aleph. The curse of a chacham, even al tanai, comes to be. Meaning, if a chacham gives a klala, and even though that curse is dependent on something, even if that something doesn't come to fruition, there's an idea that the word of the chacham has an effect regardless of whether the stipulation was fulfilled or not. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, God, if you save the Jewish people, great, and if you destroy them, erase me from the book. And God did not destroy them, so Moshe Rabbeinu's name should continue to be in the book. Nevertheless, Moshe Rabbeinu's name does not appear in Parshas Tetzaveh. Now, why Parshas Tetzaveh? Moshe Rabbeinu's name could be omitted from any Parsha. I once saw from the Ben Ish Chai, I believe in the Sefer Adaras Eliyahu, that Misifrecha asher kosafta, Sifrecha, Sefer Chaf, the 20th book. And lo and behold, Oyam V'Noira, Pilei Plum, it is a wonder of wonders. The 20th Parsha in the Torah is Parshas Tetzaveh. So Moshe said, Mecheni na, erase me, mi Sefer Chaf, from the 20th book. Furthermore, says the Haturim, this Parsha talks about the protocol and the ritual of the Kohen Gadol. And Kahuna Gedola, this institution, belonged to Moshe Rabbeinu originally. However, because he delayed and refused to fulfill the mission of Hashem, Hashem took it away from him and gave it to Aaron. Therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu's name is omitted from the Parsha. Listen carefully, it would cause Moshe too much aggravation to have his name in the Parsha, and yet this be a subject that was taken away from him. So we, so to speak, we don't even discuss Moshe Rabbeinu when it comes to the inyan, when it comes to the subject of the Kahuna Gedola. Then the Haturim says on the word kasis, of course the Parsha begins speaking about the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, which comes from pure olive oil kasis, which is banged out. Well, we know the menorah was lit for the period of the first temple and the second temple. First temple is 410, stood for 410 years. The second temple stood for 420. The word kasis consists of chaf taf 420, yud taf 410. That references the two periods in history when the menorah was lit. We move on to Parak Chaf Ches, Pasuk Vav, V'sheish mashzar. Says the Haturim, V'sheish mashzar is gematria Shloishim Shnayim Chutim, 32 threads. This corresponds to, what is the significance of Shloishim Shnayim Chutim, 32 threads, Keneged the Torah. The Torah begins with the letter Beis and ends with a Lamed, and the Sheish Mashzar, which consists of 32 threads, was a remez, was an allusion, conveyed the message that this reflects and represents the Torah HaKedosha. Now we go to Perek Chavches Pasuk Yud. Shisha Mishamoisam Al. The Pasuk says that 6 of the names of the Shvatim were on one stone, and the names of the other 6 Shvatim were on the other stone. The Haturim says the Rashi Tevos of Shisha Mishamoisam Al spell out Shema. What is the connection between the Shvatim and Shema? Well, of course we know. The Gemara tells us in Masechet Pesachim on Daf Nun Vav that at the deathbed of Yaakov Avinu, he was frightened. He was afraid. The Shekhinah departed. He thought maybe there was one of his children was not worthy. So the Shvatim turned to Yaakov Avinu and they say, Shema Yisrael, listen up, our father Yaakov, whose name was also Yisrael. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem, our God, Hashem Echad, we all believe in one God. So the Shvatim were the first to declare Shema Yisrael, and their names, which are inscribed on the two stones on the shoulders of the Kohen Gadol, the phraseology, Shisha Mishemaisam Al, allude to Shema, the recitation of Shema that was said by the Shvatim. We go out to Parak Chavches, Pasuk Chaf. Parak Chavches, Pasuk Chaf, where the Torah tells us about the 12 stones. The final stone was V'hator haravi'i Tarshish V'shayam V'yashfei. The final stone was Yashfei. That corresponded to the final Shevet, Binyamin. In fact, says the Baal Haturim, the gematria of Yashfei, which is 395, is the equivalent of Binyamin, Ben Yaakov, because the Yashfei was in fact the stone of Binyamin. We go to Perek Chavches, Pasuk Lamed, Es ha'urim v'es hatumim. That it says that Moshe will place in the Choshen HaMishpat the Urim v'Tumim, the parchment that contained the ineffable name of Hashem, and it would be carried on Aaron's heart. Well, we know Hashem's great name consists of 72 letters. The gematria of Es ha'urim v'es hatumim is Shem ben Shivim Ushtayim, the name of God that has 72 letters. And now we come to one of my favorite Baal Haturims in the entire Torah. The pasuk speaks about the me'il. On the hem of the me'il was a pomegranate and a bell, and a pomegranate and a bell, and Aaron would wear it, and the pasuk says, "V'hayal Aaron l'shas," it was on Aaron when he served. V'nishma koiloi, and his voice was heard. Its voice, the sound of the bell and the pomegranate was heard. B'vayayal HaKodesh. It says the word v'nishma, and it was heard. It says the Baal Haturim, 3 times in Tanakh do we have the word v'nishma. The Masoretic note indicates that the word v'nishma appears 3 times. Number 1, in this pasuk, v'nishma koiloi b'vayayal HaKodesh. The sound of the me'il will be heard when he comes into the holy. Furthermore, Parshas Mishpatim, God offers us the Torah. All that the Lord speaks, we will do and we will listen. V'nishma, in reference to the Torah. And then in Megillas Esther, regarding the edict of the king, V'nishma piskam hamelch asher ya'aseh b'chol malchusai ki rabahi, and it will be heard the edict of the king in his whole kingdom, for it is very great. But the Baal Haturim, Al Pi Remez, he says, in that case, we have the word v'nishma in 3 situations. We have v'nishma regarding the me'il in this parsha, in the realm of avodah, service of God in the temple. We have the word v'nishma in response to the giving of the Torah. We have the word v'nishma in reference to the giving of the Torah. And we have v'nishma regarding the reference to Megillas Esther, v'nishma piskam hamelech. Says the Baal Haturim, look in Masechet Megillah Gimel Amud Beis, Amar Rabbah, if you have a choice between Mikra Megillah and Talmud Torah, what do? You're in the middle of learning, you're even maybe listening to an all Parsha Shiur, and if not an all Parsha Shiur, an all Daf Shiur, and it comes time for Megillas Esther, Mevatlin Talmud Torah Uban Lishmaya Mikra Megillah. We stop learning and we come to hear the Megillah. By the way, many Achronim ask, why does the Gemara call it Bittul Torah? It's not Bittul Torah. The Megillah is also Torah. It's one of the 24 books of scriptures, one of the books of Tanakh. Why is it considered Bittul Torah to stop learning to hear the Megillah? The Megillah is also Torah. Well, if you have a choice, and that's a question that is addressed by Reb Shlomo Kluger and the Beis Ephraim and many other Mefarshim, but the halachic conclusion is we stop learning to hear the Megillah. That means the Megillah is greater than Talmud Torah. So if you have a choice between V'nishma Piska Ma'melech Asher Ya'aseh B'chol Masai Ki Rabbahi, if you have a choice between Megillas Esther or Nasa V'nishma Torah, you know what you do? V'nishma Piska Ma'melech, you have to hear the Megillah. Why? Ki Rabbahi. The Megillah is greater. It's greater than the Nasa V'nishma. You have V'nishma by Torah, you have V'nishma by Megillah, but the V'nishma by Megillah, V'nishma Piska Ma'melech Asher Ya'aseh B'chol Masai Ki Rabbahi, that's a greater V'nishma. Now, what do you do if you have a choice between the V'nishma koiloi b'voy al kodesh? You have a choice of doing the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, or V'nishma piska ma'melech. There too, the Gemara says you're mevatel the avodah to come to hear the Megillah. Where do we see this? This is the remez. Even though V'nishma koiloi b'voy al kodesh, even though it says the word V'nishma in reference to avodah, but V'nishma piska ma'melech, you're going to listen to the Megillah. Why? Ki Rabbahi, because it's greater. And Oyoim V'noira, it's quite amazing. Who is the Baal HaMemra? Who stated in the Gemara that you're mevatel Torah to hear the Megillah, that you're mevatel avodah to hear the Megillah? Rabbah, Ki Rabbahi. This is a statement of Rabbah. Unbelievable. The Megillah is greater than Torah. The Megillah is Rabbah from Avodah. It's Rabbah mi Torah, and Rabbah was the one who said it. What's a little bit challenging is, according to our text in the Gemara, it's not Rabbah who said it, it's Rava. And we don't have any accepted girsa that it was Rabbah who made the statement that Mikra Megillah is more important than Torah or Avodah. So some Mefarshim learn that the name Rava used to be pronounced Rabbah. Reish Beis Aleph, which we pronounce today Rava, used to be pronounced Rabbah. And the remez is in the pronunciation, but not in the spelling. But be it as it may, let us just spend a few moments analyzing this halacha. Why is it that Megillas Esther is V'nishma Piskam HaMelech Asher Ya'aseh B'chol Masai Ki Rabbahi? Why is Megillah greater than Torah? Why is it greater than the Avodah? There's an amazing comment of the Chassam Sofer. The Chassam Sofer writes in his drashos for Zayin Adar in the year Tav Kuf Tzadik Beis, 1832, on page Kuf Samach Daled. He says, She'ar Kadosh HaKolol B'Megillah, the holy light, which is incorporated in the Megillah, Hu Mamish Yoiser Gadol, is actually much greater, v'nichbad, and more honorable, mitoiraseinu hakadoisha ba'atzma, than the light contained in the actual Torah. Do you believe such a thing? You hear what the Chassam Sofer is saying? That the great illumination that shines forth from Megillas Esther is greater than the light of the Torah. How can we even say such a thing? Is there something more illuminative? Is there something greater than the light of the Torah itself? And yet the Chassam Sofer says the light of Megillas Esther is greater than the light of the Torah. So I want to share with you a great secret. There's a Medrash, Bereshis Rabbah, Parsha Yud Zayin Oisei. The Medrash says there are things in this world that are a noivel, a semblance of the actual. A noivel, a semblance of prophecy, is a dream. A semblance of the world to come is Shabbos. The Gemara talks about others. Honey is a semblance of the man. Sleep is a semblance of death. Says this Medrash, Noiveles chachma shel maila Torah. If the Medrash didn't say this, we could never bring ourselves to say this. The Torah is a semblance of a body of wisdom that is called chachma elyaina, the supreme wisdom. That means the Torah that we have access to is the filtered wisdom of God as we can connect with it. But there is a concept that there is the raw Chachma v'Kadosh Baruch Hu, unfiltered, unadulterated, so to speak. It has never been diffused down to this world, and that is Chachma Elyaina. And the Torah is a semblance of that Chachma Elyaina. Remarkable. We don't think of it that way. We think that the Torah that we have access is the supreme, but no, the Medrash says there's something called Chachma Elyaina. Do we have anything in this world that is from the unfiltered Chachma Elyaina itself? There's a Sefer Tor Barakes, which was written by Rav Aryeh Kohen, one of the students of the Arizal, and he reveals to us that the reason why we are mevatel Torah to hear the Megillah is because the Megillah is greater than the Torah. Because the Torah is a semblance of the Chachma Elyoina, and Megillas Esther actually is a segment and a element and a reflection of the Chachma Elyoina itself. That is why Megillas Esther trumps Talmud Torah, trumps Avodah. That is why Ki Rabahi. That is the explanation for the observation of the Baal Haturim, that Megillas Esther in fact comes from a supreme body of Chachma that transcends the Torah, if we can say such a thing, but that is the explanation of Reb Chaim, of Rav Aryeh Kohen, explaining the halacha of why we're mevatel Talmud Torah for Mikra Megillah, why the pasuk says, "V'nishma piskam hamelech b'chol malchusai ki rabahi." So, as we approach the great day of Purim, about which the Arizal says, the oiros, the lights that the Rebbeinu Shalom shines down to the world, the spiritual glare, the spiritual illumination of Purim is greater than any other holiday, greater than Shabbos and greater than Yom Tov. And the Rebbeinu Shalom bequeathed to Klal Yisrael this unusually holy document, the Megillas Esther, which is from the Chachma Elyoina itself, and this is merumaz, as the Baal Haturim brings out, the Nishma Piskam Hamelech B'chol Malchusai Ki Rabahi. It is so great. So let us listen carefully to each word that reverberates in our mind, in our soul, will elevate us and grant us tremendous kedusha for our entire life. Wishing everyone a wonderful Shabbos and a Freilichen Purim.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.